The greatest mistake most people make is believing that the future simply arrives one day at a time. The Stoics saw a different truth. They believed the future is quietly shaped, long before it becomes visible, in the private moments when no one is watching. It is built by the thoughts you choose to repeat, the habits you refuse to question, and the decisions you make when comfort asks you to stay the same. That is why two people can stand in the same storm, face the same uncertainty, and walk away with completely different lives. One becomes stronger because hardship refines their character. The other remains trapped because hardship deepens their fear. The difference was never luck. It was the discipline of the mind they chose to cultivate. There is something both unsettling and liberating about that idea. It means the life waiting ahead is not determined by perfect timing, extraordinary talent, or favorable circumstances. It is shaped by the quiet discipline of mastering what is already within your control. Modern life constantly urges us to chase the next achievement, the next opportunity, or the next version of ourselves that finally feels complete. Stoicism offers another path. It reminds us that a meaningful future is not created by chasing distant promises, but by meeting the present moment with clarity, purpose, and steady action. Every ordinary decision becomes a quiet vote for the person you are becoming. Most of those decisions seem too small to matter while they are happening, yet together they shape a life that no sudden breakthrough ever could. Long before success becomes visible, character has already been formed, and perhaps the future you have been searching for is not waiting somewhere beyond the horizon. Perhaps it is already being built by the choices you make today. Think about how often your happiness depends on a version of tomorrow that has not yet arrived. You tell yourself that life will finally make sense once you earn more money, find the right relationship, leave your current job, or accomplish the goal that has occupied your thoughts for months or even years. Until then, your mind keeps wandering ahead of your body, bargaining with possibilities that never seem close enough. Each promise whispers that peace is waiting just beyond the next achievement. The strange part is how convincing that voice becomes after repeating itself for so long. Without noticing, you begin treating the present like a hallway instead of the home where your entire life is actually unfolding, one quiet decision at a time, whether you recognize it or not. The Stoics understood that this quiet habit creates a subtle prison. Every postponed moment teaches the mind that fulfillment belongs somewhere else. Instead of appreciating what already exists, attention becomes chained to imagined circumstances. You begin believing that confidence will arrive with success, courage will appear after certainty, and gratitude will naturally follow accomplishment. Yet experience repeatedly proves the opposite. Peace grows wherever attention learns to remain. Satisfaction deepens whenever actions align with values instead of expectations. The future certainly matters, but it cannot be lived before it arrives. The present quietly shapes everything that comes next. Neglect it, and tomorrow inherits confusion. Respect it, and tomorrow receives steadiness already practiced. This is not passive acceptance, but disciplined participation in reality, exactly as it exists before anything else can change. Many people resist this idea because it feels too simple. They expect transformation to begin with dramatic breakthroughs or perfect opportunities. Quiet repetition appears insignificant. Still, every meaningful change begins beneath the surface. A single morning spent choosing discipline over impulse seems ordinary. Another thoughtful conversation instead of another complaint appears small. Reading one page instead of endlessly scrolling hardly feels heroic. Yet these modest choices accumulate with surprising force. As Seneca observed, no man becomes good by chance. Character grows through repetition, not inspiration alone. The mind slowly trusts what it repeatedly experiences. When actions confirm your intentions, confidence stops depending on mood and starts resting upon evidence created by your own behavior. That quiet reliability, becomes the foundation from which lasting progress naturally emerges, even before visible results begin appearing in your external circumstances. Consider how quickly the mind invents reasons to postpone difficult work. It says tomorrow will offer more energy, better timing, clearer motivation. Those arguments sound reasonable because they protect comfort. Comfort is persuasive precisely because it rarely announces its hidden cost. Days become weeks, weeks become years, and postponed intentions quietly harden into identity. Soon you no longer believe you are waiting. You believe you simply are this kind of person. Stoic practice interrupts that story. It reminds you that identity follows repeated choices, not passing feelings. Every disciplined response weakens the old narrative and strengthens another. Eventually, the voice asking you to delay loses authority because experience has demonstrated something stronger. You can act before enthusiasm appears. You can move while uncertainty remains. That discovery changes far more deeply. Notice that the happiest moments often arrive unexpectedly. They appear during ordinary afternoons rather than celebrated milestones. A quiet walk, an honest conversation, finishing meaningful work, sharing laughter without checking the clock. None of these moments demand extraordinary success. They simply require enough presence to recognize them. The mind obsessed with tomorrow often overlooks today's quiet abundance. Stoicism gently redirects attention toward what can actually be experienced. Breath, effort, friendship, learning, patience, responsibility, integrity. These become sources of stability because they remain available regardless of changing circumstances. When appreciation grows from these foundations, external achievements become welcome additions rather than emotional necessities. Success still matters, but it no longer carries the impossible burden of creating your entire sense of worth or peace. Instead, it becomes an expression of inner steadiness. This shift does not remove ambition, it refines it. Goals remain, plans continue, effort expands, but desperation gradually fades. You work because meaningful action expresses your values, not because achievement alone determines your identity. Ironically, this calmer approach often produces better results. Clear judgment replaces frantic reaction. Patience improves decisions. Consistency outlasts excitement. Setbacks become information instead of personal verdicts. Even disappointment carries useful lessons when pride stops resisting reality. A resilient mind learns faster because it no longer wastes energy defending illusions. It simply notices what happened, accepts responsibility where appropriate, and returns to the next worthwhile action without unnecessary resentment or self-condemnation. Progress becomes quieter, but more dependable. Each day offers another opportunity to practice the person you hope to become, beginning with this very present moment. Eventually, you realize that the future has never been hiding somewhere beyond the horizon. It has always been taking shape inside ordinary moments that once seemed too small to matter. Every patient response, every honest decision, every promise kept when nobody was watching quietly reshaped the direction of your life. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." The Stoics understood that greatness rarely announces itself with noise. More often it grows unnoticed, protected by daily discipline and thoughtful attention. That is why lasting fulfillment cannot be postponed until some perfect tomorrow. It begins wherever you choose to stand fully present, accepting reality without surrendering your capacity to improve it. And once that understanding settles deeply within you, the future stops feeling like something to chase and becomes something you quietly build, one faithful choice after another, every day. If the future is shaped by what we choose today, then an uncomfortable question naturally follows. Why do so many intelligent, capable people find themselves repeating the same patterns year after year? They promise themselves that this time will be different. They decide they will finally become more disciplined, more patient, more focused, or more courageous. For a few days, perhaps even a few weeks, everything seems to move in the right direction. Then something familiar happens. An unexpected setback appears. A difficult conversation shakes their confidence. An old habit quietly returns. Before long, they are standing in the same place, wondering why real change always seems just beyond reach. It is tempting to blame bad timing, difficult circumstances, or other people. Those explanations feel comforting because they protect us from looking inward. Yet comfort is not always the same as truth. Sometimes the most important answer is also the one we spend the most energy avoiding. This is why two people can live through remarkably similar experiences and emerge with completely different lives. Both may lose a job. Both may experience rejection. Both may watch years of effort disappear in a single unexpected moment. One person carries that experience like a permanent wound, using it as evidence that trying again is pointless. The other carries the same experience as instruction, examining what happened with honesty before moving forward with greater wisdom. The difference is not intelligence, privilege, or even determination alone. It begins with interpretation. One asks, consciously or unconsciously, "Why is this happening to me?" The other quietly asks, "What is this teaching me?" Those two questions create entirely different futures because they shape entirely different ways of seeing the world. Long before circumstances begin to change, perspective already has. This realization can feel deeply unsettling because it removes one of the most comforting illusions people hold onto. It suggests that much of our suffering is not created solely by what happens around us, but by the stories we continually tell ourselves about what those events mean. That is difficult to accept because stories become familiar companions. Some people have spent years repeating the belief that they are unlucky, overlooked, or destined to struggle. Others quietly convince themselves that they are simply not disciplined enough, talented enough, or worthy enough to build the life they want. Eventually, those thoughts stop sounding like opinions and begin sounding like facts. Yet the Stoics would remind us that repetition does not create truth. It only creates familiarity. A thought repeated 1,000 times can still be false if it keeps us trapped instead of helping us grow. Notice how easily the mind searches for evidence that supports whatever it already believes. Someone convinced they always fail remembers every disappointment while overlooking every quiet success. Another person who believes growth is possible notices opportunities hidden inside the very same circumstances. This is not blind optimism. Stoicism never encouraged pretending that pain does not exist. Instead, it encouraged seeing events clearly without adding unnecessary suffering through distorted judgment. Reality is already demanding enough. It does not need the extra weight of hopeless assumptions. When the mind learns to separate facts from interpretation, something remarkable begins to happen. Problems remain real, but they no longer define identity. Failure becomes an event rather than a permanent label. Criticism becomes information rather than condemnation. Discomfort becomes temporary instead of overwhelming. The external world may remain unpredictable, but the internal response becomes steadier with practice. Of course, changing these patterns is not as simple as deciding to think differently once. The mind follows familiar paths because those paths have been strengthened through repetition. Every reaction practiced over months or years becomes easier to repeat the next time difficulty appears. This is why lasting transformation requires patience. As Epictetus wisely said, "No great thing is created suddenly." You are not arguing with a single thought. You are gradually reshaping the habits of interpretation that have quietly directed your life for years. At first, the old voice still appears. It still predicts failure. It still encourages fear. The difference is that you no longer accept every thought as unquestionable truth. You pause. You observe. You ask whether the judgment is helping you move forward or simply protecting an old identity that no longer deserves authority. That small pause may seem insignificant, yet it is often where genuine freedom begins. If these ideas are helping you see yourself and your life a little more clearly, consider subscribing. As a quiet commitment to returning to ideas that strengthen judgment, deepen character, and remind you that a better life is built one thoughtful choice at a time. Once this way of seeing becomes more natural, difficult experiences begin to change their role in your life. They no longer exist only to test your patience. They become opportunities to strengthen it. Delays teach endurance. Mistakes teach humility. Rejection teaches resilience. Success itself even becomes easier to manage because identity is no longer entirely dependent upon achievement. There is a quiet confidence that grows when self-respect comes from responding well instead of controlling outcomes. That confidence cannot be borrowed from praise or taken away by criticism because it rests upon something much more stable. It rests upon the knowledge that while circumstances will always change, your ability to choose your response remains one of the few enduring freedoms life can never fully remove. And from that freedom, a different future begins to unfold naturally, one thoughtful judgment at a time. Understanding what needs to change is rarely the hardest part. Most people already know the habits that hold them back. They know the conversations they have been avoiding, the responsibilities they continue postponing, and the excuses that quietly repeat themselves every time an opportunity appears. The real mystery is why awareness alone changes so little. Why does someone who genuinely wants a better future continue returning to the same familiar patterns? It is easy to call this laziness, but that explanation misses something much deeper. More often than not, the resistance comes from familiarity. The mind naturally prefers what it recognizes, even when what it recognizes no longer serves it. There is a strange comfort in predictable routines, even painful ones, because they require very little psychological effort. Remaining the same may be frustrating, but at least it feels known. Growth asks us to step into uncertainty, and uncertainty has a way of making even our biggest dreams feel less attractive than our smallest comforts. This is why genuine change often feels uncomfortable long before it feels rewarding. The first day of a new habit rarely brings confidence. The first difficult conversation rarely feels natural. Choosing discipline instead of distraction does not immediately create peace. In fact, it often creates the opposite. The mind protests because it mistakes unfamiliarity for danger. It whispers that tomorrow would be a better day to begin. It suggests waiting until motivation feels stronger or circumstances become more favorable. These thoughts sound reasonable because they appeal to patience while quietly encouraging delay. Yet every postponed decision strengthens the habit of postponing itself. Eventually, waiting becomes a lifestyle rather than a temporary pause. Months pass, years pass. The future that once seemed so close slowly drifts farther away, not because it became impossible, but because hesitation became more practiced than action. There is also another reason resistance remains so powerful. The rewards of comfort arrive immediately, while the rewards of discipline usually arrive later. Choosing distraction provides instant relief. Avoiding a difficult task removes tension for the moment. Remaining silent during an important conversation prevents temporary discomfort. The cost, however, quietly accumulates beneath the surface. Opportunities disappear, confidence weakens, regret grows. By the time those consequences become visible, they feel disconnected from the small decisions that created them. Discipline works in exactly the opposite direction. The effort feels immediate, but the reward appears gradually. One honest conversation may not transform a relationship overnight. One morning of focused work may not change an entire career, yet each deliberate choice becomes another small investment in a future that is slowly taking shape. The mind rarely notices this process while it is happening, but time never stops collecting the results. Eventually, a quiet shift begins to occur. The uncomfortable actions that once demanded enormous effort become more natural, not because life becomes easier, but because the person facing life has changed. Courage grows through repetition, patience deepens through practice. Discipline becomes less about forcing yourself and more about honoring the values you have chosen to live by. The path forward no longer depends on waiting for the perfect mood or ideal circumstances. It depends on trusting that each deliberate step, no matter how ordinary it seems, is reshaping both your character and your future. That is how lasting transformation has always unfolded. Not through dramatic moments of inspiration, but through countless quiet decisions made when comfort invited you to remain the same and you calmly chose to keep moving forward anyway. This is why habits deserve far more attention than most people give them. A habit is not merely something you do repeatedly. It is evidence of what your mind has accepted as normal. Once a behavior becomes familiar, it requires very little effort to repeat. That is why both helpful and harmful habits become stronger with time. Every repetition makes the next repetition slightly easier. The process is almost invisible while it is happening, yet its effects become impossible to ignore after months or years. Someone who spends a few minutes reading every evening may not notice much difference after a week. Someone who constantly interrupts themselves with distractions may not immediately recognize the cost either, but time quietly amplifies both choices. One mind becomes calmer and more focused. The other becomes increasingly restless without understanding exactly why. The difference did not appear overnight. It was built through small actions that seemed insignificant until they were viewed together. This explains why meaningful change often feels slower than people expect. They focus on changing visible outcomes while overlooking the invisible habits producing those outcomes every single day. They want greater confidence without changing the daily conversations they have with themselves. They hope for stronger relationships while continuing the same patterns of avoidance or impatience. They seek peace while feeding their attention with endless noise and distraction. None of these desires are unreasonable. The mistake lies in expecting different results while protecting the routines that created the current reality. The Stoics never suggested that life changes because we wish it to. They believed life changes because we repeatedly choose thoughts and actions that slowly reshape our character. Results eventually follow, but only after the deeper foundation has already begun to change beneath the surface. Think about a mason building a stone wall. No single stone determines the strength of the entire structure. One carefully placed stone appears almost meaningless by itself, yet every stone supports the next, and eventually a solid wall emerges where there was once only open ground. Character develops through exactly the same process. Every time you choose honesty when deception feels easier, another stone is placed. Every time you remain calm instead of reacting impulsively, another stone is added. Every morning you keep a promise to yourself. Despite lacking motivation, the structure becomes stronger. Looking at one decision in isolation, it hardly seems remarkable. Looking back after years of consistent practice, the transformation becomes undeniable. The future is not constructed through one defining moment. It rises quietly from thousands of ordinary choices moving steadily in the same direction. There is another reason these daily patterns matter so deeply. Every habit sends a subtle message about who you believe yourself to be. Someone who consistently honors small commitments begins trusting their own word. Someone who repeatedly breaks promises to themselves slowly loses confidence, even if they cannot explain why. This kind of confidence has very little to do with praise or external success. It grows from private evidence collected over time. Each disciplined action becomes proof that your intentions can be trusted. Each avoided responsibility quietly suggests the opposite. The remarkable part is that the mind remembers these moments even when you no longer consciously think about them. It builds an internal picture of your character based not on your ambitions, but on your repeated behavior. That silent picture influences future decisions far more than motivational speeches ever could. Because of this, the smallest actions deserve greater respect than they usually receive. Making your bed when no one will notice. Finishing the work you promised yourself you would complete. Putting the phone aside during a meaningful conversation. Choosing reflection before reaction. None of these moments appear important enough to change a life. Yet together they establish a pattern of discipline that gradually extends into every other area. The Stoics believed excellence is never an accident, because excellence is simply the visible result of invisible consistency practiced over a long period. Long before success becomes obvious to the outside world, character has already been quietly shaped within. Over time, this understanding changes the way you measure progress. Instead of asking whether life has transformed overnight, you begin noticing whether today's choices are slightly wiser than yesterday's. That shift removes much of the frustration people experience when chasing immediate results. You stop waiting for dramatic breakthroughs and start appreciating steady improvement. One thoughtful decision becomes enough for today, then another tomorrow. Eventually, those ordinary moments no longer feel ordinary at all. They become the quiet architecture of a life built with intention rather than impulse, reminding you that the future has always been constructed one small, faithful choice at a time. Much of our energy is quietly spent trying to influence things that have never truly belonged to us. We replay conversations in our minds, wishing we had said something different. We imagine how other people perceive us, hoping to shape opinions we can never fully control. We become anxious about events that have not happened, constructing countless possible futures and attempting to prepare for every one of them. At first, this feels responsible. It feels like planning. Yet planning eventually becomes worrying when it continues long after useful action has ended. The mind mistakes constant thinking for meaningful progress, even though nothing in the external world has actually changed. Hours disappear inside imaginary arguments, imagined failures, imagined disappointments. Meanwhile, the present moment quietly slips away unnoticed, carrying with it opportunities that existed only once. It is remarkable how much life can be lost while trying to protect ourselves from experiences that never arrive. Think about how often a single opinion has the power to change an entire day. One critical remark overshadows 10 compliments. One misunderstanding occupies the mind for hours. One moment of rejection begins shaping the story we tell ourselves about our worth. None of these experiences are unusual. They are deeply human. The question is whether they deserve the authority we give them. The Stoics would gently remind us that another person's judgment belongs to them, not to us. Their thoughts are influenced by experiences we cannot fully understand, expectations we did not create, and perspectives we may never share. Building your peace upon opinions that constantly change is like building a house upon shifting sand. No matter how carefully the structure is designed, it will never feel secure because the foundation itself refuses to remain still. Lasting stability requires something far more dependable than public approval. This does not mean becoming indifferent to others or refusing all feedback. Wisdom grows through listening carefully and learning continuously. The difference lies in recognizing the boundary between thoughtful consideration and emotional dependence. As Epictetus reminded us, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, "He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone." Constructive criticism can improve your work. It should not determine your value. Praise can encourage you. It should not become the only reason you continue. Once your sense of direction depends entirely upon external reactions, you surrender control over your own peace. Every compliment becomes necessary. Every disagreement feels threatening. Every unexpected setback appears larger than it truly is, because your emotional balance has been placed into hands that were never meant to carry it. Freedom begins returning the moment you reclaim responsibility for your own judgments instead of borrowing them from everyone around you. The same principle applies to uncertainty itself. Much of human suffering comes from demanding guarantees that life has never promised. We want certainty before making difficult decisions. We want assurance that our efforts will succeed before we begin. We want complete clarity before taking the next step. Yet certainty is rarely available in advance. Waiting for it often becomes another form of delay, disguised as caution. The Stoics accepted uncertainty as part of existence, rather than treating it as an obstacle to overcome. They understood that wisdom does not eliminate unpredictability. It prepares the mind to respond well, regardless of what unfolds. This perspective removes an enormous burden. Instead of trying to predict every challenge, attention shifts toward becoming someone capable of meeting challenges with patience, reason, and integrity. The future remains uncertain, but the response to it becomes increasingly dependable. Once this understanding begins to settle into your thinking, failure loses much of its emotional weight. It still disappoints, it still hurts. Stoicism never suggests pretending otherwise. The pain is real because effort is real, but pain no longer becomes proof that you should abandon the journey. Instead, it becomes something to examine with honesty rather than fear. A failed attempt asks for reflection, not self-condemnation. It invites curiosity instead of shame. What actually happened? Which part was within your control? Which lesson deserves your attention? These questions shift your energy away from regret and toward improvement. That small shift changes everything because it transforms every setback into a source of wisdom rather than a permanent wound carried into the future. Criticism follows a similar pattern. Few experiences affect people as deeply as feeling judged by others. A single careless remark can echo in the mind for days, sometimes even years. It is remarkable how easily one negative opinion overshadows countless moments of encouragement. This happens because people often borrow their sense of worth from the approval surrounding them. When praise arrives, confidence rises. When criticism appears, confidence disappears just as quickly. That creates a fragile foundation because other people's opinions are constantly changing. They are influenced by moods, expectations, misunderstandings, and experiences you may never know. Building your peace upon something so unstable guarantees unnecessary suffering. The Stoics understood this clearly. They believed that your character should be measured by your own actions and intentions before it is measured by the reactions of anyone else. This does not mean ignoring every criticism or refusing to learn from others. Wisdom grows through listening carefully. Sometimes another person sees something we cannot yet recognize in ourselves. The important distinction lies in separating useful feedback from personal identity. Someone may criticize your work without diminishing your worth. Someone may disagree with your decisions without defining your character. Once that distinction becomes clear, criticism becomes less frightening because it no longer threatens the foundation of who you are. It simply becomes another piece of information that can either be accepted, refined, or calmly set aside. Emotional stability grows each time you respond with thoughtful reflection instead of immediate defensiveness. Gradually, your confidence becomes rooted less in applause and more in integrity. Delays also begin to lose their power. Much of modern life encourages measuring success through immediate results. If progress is not visible quickly, discouragement quietly replaces commitment. We expect transformation to happen at the speed of our expectations. Yet nature rarely works that way. Trees spend years strengthening roots before reaching impressive heights. Rivers shape stone through persistence rather than force. Human character develops according to the same patient rhythm. The most meaningful forms of growth often remain invisible for long periods. You may become more disciplined long before external success reflects that discipline. You may become wiser before anyone else notices. You may become calmer without receiving recognition for it. These invisible victories matter because they create the internal conditions from which lasting success eventually emerges. Think about how differently you would approach your goals if every obstacle became part of your education rather than evidence that you were unqualified. A difficult season would no longer mean you were falling behind. It would mean you were developing qualities that easier circumstances could never have produced. Patience cannot grow without waiting. Courage cannot grow without fear. Resilience cannot grow without adversity. These qualities are not acquired in comfort. They are shaped by experiences most people spend their lives trying to avoid. The Stoics never glorified suffering for its own sake, but they recognized that hardship often reveals strengths that comfort leaves undiscovered. Instead of asking why life had become difficult, they focused on becoming equal to whatever difficulty appeared before them. Over time, this perspective creates a quiet confidence that does not need constant reassurance. It is different from the loud confidence built upon success or public recognition. It speaks less and remains steadier. It trusts itself because it has survived uncertainty before. It knows that setbacks pass, criticism fades, and delays eventually reveal their purpose. Most importantly, it understands that no external circumstance possesses the power to determine the quality of your character without your permission. That realization changes the way you move through life. Challenges remain challenging, but they no longer control your direction. They become opportunities to practice the person you have chosen to become. And perhaps that is the greatest gift Stoicism offers, not the promise of an easier future, but the quiet strength to meet whatever future arrives with clarity, patience, and an unshakable sense of inner steadiness. As this way of thinking becomes more natural, something unexpected begins to change. The future slowly loses its power to intimidate you. Not because uncertainty disappears, but because you stop believing that your safety depends upon predicting every possible outcome. For many people, fear of the future comes from an impossible expectation. They believe they must know exactly how everything will unfold before taking the next step. They search for guarantees that life has never promised. They postpone important decisions while waiting for complete certainty, convinced that one more plan, one more calculation, or one more piece of advice will finally remove every risk. Yet certainty remains just beyond reach. The future refuses to reveal itself on demand, and the harder we try to force it into clarity, the more anxious we often become. The Stoics recognized this long ago. They understood that peace does not come from controlling tomorrow. It comes from preparing the mind to meet tomorrow, whatever shape it takes. This realization changes the direction of your attention. Instead of constantly asking what the future will bring, you begin asking what kind of person you are becoming before it arrives. That shift appears subtle, but its consequences are profound. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." One question places all power in circumstances beyond your influence. The other quietly returns responsibility to your own character. You may never know whether opportunities will appear exactly as you hope. You cannot predict every challenge, every disappointment, or every unexpected success. What you can shape is the quality of your response. Every ordinary day becomes another opportunity to strengthen patience, deepen self-control, refine judgment, and practice integrity. Slowly, the future transforms from something mysterious, waiting to happen, into something you are preparing yourself to meet through daily choices. The unknown remains unknown, yet it no longer feels like an enemy because you trust the person who will eventually face it. Much of anxiety grows from the illusion that every possibility must be rehearsed before life can safely continue. The mind creates endless scenarios, imagining conversations that may never happen, failures that may never occur, and problems that may never exist. Hours are spent preparing for futures that disappear before they ever become reality. This constant mental rehearsal feels productive because it creates the impression of control. In truth, it often steals attention from the only moment where meaningful preparation can actually take place. No amount of worrying strengthens character. Endless anticipation does not create wisdom. The Stoics drew a clear distinction between thoughtful preparation and anxious prediction. Preparation asks, "What can I do today?" Anxiety insists on solving problems that belong to tomorrow. One builds strength, the other quietly drains it. Think about the strongest people you have encountered throughout your life. They are rarely the ones who always had perfect circumstances or carefully planned lives. More often, they are people who remained composed when plans unexpectedly changed. They adapted without losing themselves. They faced uncertainty without abandoning their principles. Their confidence did not come from knowing exactly what would happen next. It came from trusting their ability to respond wisely regardless of what happened. That kind of confidence cannot be purchased or borrowed. It is earned gradually through experience. Every challenge met with honesty becomes another reason to trust yourself. Every difficult decision made according to your values becomes another piece of evidence that you can rely upon your own judgment. This is why genuine confidence feels quiet. It does not need to announce itself because it has already been tested in private moments long before anyone else notices. There is a remarkable freedom in accepting that life will never become completely predictable. Once that truth settles into the mind, enormous amounts of unnecessary tension begin to disappear. You stop demanding certainty from situations that cannot provide it. Relationships become easier because you stop expecting people to behave exactly as you wish. Work becomes steadier because your effort no longer depends entirely upon immediate results. Even disappointment begins to feel different. Instead of treating it as proof that life has gone wrong, you recognize it as another part of a reality that has always included change, loss, success, failure, beginnings and endings. Nothing has become worse. You have simply stopped expecting permanence from a world that has always been in motion. This perspective also changes the meaning of resilience. Many people imagine resilience as an extraordinary quality possessed by only a fortunate few. The Stoics viewed it differently. They believed resilience grows through ordinary practice. It develops every time you remain calm during inconvenience instead of reacting impulsively. Every time you keep your word despite difficulty. Every time you choose thoughtful action over emotional impulse. These moments appear too small to matter while they are happening. Yet together, they gradually reshape the way you experience life. Character is strengthened not through rare heroic acts, but through countless quiet decisions repeated consistently. Long before resilience becomes visible during major challenges, it has already been built through ordinary days that seemed unremarkable at the time. Eventually, you notice something else. Your goals remain important, but they no longer carry the impossible responsibility of guaranteeing happiness. Success becomes something to pursue with dedication rather than desperation. You continue planning because planning is wise, not because plans eliminate uncertainty. You continue striving because meaningful work deserves your best effort, not because achievement alone determines your worth. This balance creates an unexpected sense of peace. You care deeply about the future without becoming imprisoned by it. You invest fully in today's responsibilities because you understand they are quietly shaping tomorrow, yet you no longer demand that tomorrow unfold according to your exact expectations. There is confidence in preparation without attachment to outcomes. Over time, this quiet discipline becomes one of the greatest sources of inner stability. Life continues surprising you. Some opportunities arrive unexpectedly, while others disappear despite your best efforts. People change, circumstances shift, seasons of abundance are followed by seasons of challenge. None of this can be prevented. What changes is the person moving through those experiences. Instead of asking whether the future will finally become easier, you begin noticing that you have become stronger. Instead of hoping uncertainty will disappear, you realize uncertainty has become far less frightening because it no longer determines your peace. The Stoics believed this was one of life's deepest forms of freedom, not escaping the unknown, but becoming the kind of person who can walk into it with calmness, clarity, integrity, and quiet confidence, knowing that whatever tomorrow brings, your greatest preparation has already begun within you today. The more your inner world begins to settle, the more your relationships with other people begin to change in ways you never expected. At first, this shift is almost invisible. You simply notice that conversations feel different. Disagreements no longer carry the same urgency. The need to prove yourself slowly fades. For many years, people move through life believing every interaction is quietly measuring their worth. They want to appear intelligent, successful, admired, or respected. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to defend an identity. Every disagreement feels like a personal threat. Every comparison becomes another reminder of what they believe they still lack. This creates a constant sense of tension because the mind is no longer listening to understand. It is listening to protect itself. The Stoics understood that this kind of living quietly steals peace because it turns relationships into competitions rather than opportunities for connection. The moment your sense of value stops depending upon constant validation, something remarkable begins to happen. You become free enough to truly notice the people standing in front of you. Understanding others requires a different kind of strength than impressing them. It asks for patience instead of performance. It asks you to set aside the endless conversation happening inside your own mind long enough to recognize that every person you meet is carrying a life just as complicated as your own. The stranger who appears impatient may be exhausted by struggles you cannot see. The colleague who seems distant may be carrying private grief. Even the person whose words disappoint you may be acting from fears they have never learned to express. None of this excuses harmful behavior, but it changes the way you respond to it. Instead of immediately assuming hostility, your first instinct becomes curiosity. Instead of asking why someone is making your life difficult, you quietly remember that everyone is fighting battles hidden beneath the surface. This simple realization softens judgment without weakening wisdom. It allows compassion to exist alongside healthy boundaries. Comparison also begins losing its influence. This is one of the quietest but most liberating changes a disciplined mind experiences. Modern life encourages constant comparison. There is always someone earning more, achieving more, traveling more, or receiving greater recognition. Left unchecked, the mind turns another person's success into evidence of its own failure. Every accomplishment witnessed becomes another reason to feel behind. Yet comparison rests upon an illusion. It assumes that another person's journey should somehow determine the value of your own. The Stoics rejected this idea entirely. They believed each person is responsible for living according to their own nature, their own values, and their own circumstances. Someone else's path was never meant to become your measuring stick. Once you truly understand this, another person's success stops threatening you because it no longer competes with your purpose. Their achievements belong to them. Your responsibility remains exactly where it has always been, with the quality of your own character and the choices available to you today. Gratitude naturally grows where comparison begins to fade. This kind of gratitude is not forced optimism or pretending life is perfect. It is the quiet ability to recognize what already exists without constantly measuring it against what someone else possesses. The Stoics practiced this deliberately. They reminded themselves that much of what people take for granted today was once something they desperately hoped for. A place to rest, food on the table, trusted friends, a healthy body capable of walking beneath an open sky. These ordinary blessings often disappear from awareness because familiarity makes them seem permanent. Yet nothing in life is guaranteed forever. Recognizing this does not create fear, it creates appreciation. Gratitude becomes deeper when it is rooted in reality rather than convenience. Every ordinary moment begins carrying greater weight because you understand it exists only for a limited time. This awareness changes even the smallest interactions. A simple greeting becomes more meaningful. An honest conversation feels more valuable. Time shared with loved ones is no longer treated as something that can always be postponed until later. One of the greatest illusions people carry is the belief that there will always be another opportunity, another visit, another phone call, another chance to apologize, another chance to express appreciation. Life quietly reminds us that tomorrow is never guaranteed. The Stoics reflected upon this truth, not to create sadness, but to awaken presence. When you remember that every meeting could one day become a memory, you begin paying attention differently. You listen more carefully. You speak more honestly. You become slower to hold unnecessary resentment because pride no longer seems worth sacrificing moments that cannot be repeated. Kindness also takes on a different meaning. It is no longer performed because it earns approval or makes you appear generous. It becomes an expression of inner stability. Someone whose peace depends upon winning every argument struggles to remain kind under pressure. Someone whose confidence depends upon constant recognition often becomes impatient whenever they feel overlooked. But when your identity rests upon something deeper than external reactions, kindness becomes easier because it no longer feels like weakness. Patience no longer appears passive. Forgiveness no longer seems like surrender. They become deliberate choices made by someone who understands that protecting inner peace is often more valuable than protecting wounded pride. This does not mean allowing others to mistreat you. Stoicism has never encouraged accepting injustice. It simply reminds you that responding with wisdom is always more powerful than reacting from impulse. Slowly, you begin noticing that the future you hope to build has never depended only upon personal ambition. Achievement certainly matters. Discipline matters. Purpose matters. Yet no meaningful life is built in isolation. Every conversation shapes relationships. Every relationship influences opportunities. Every act of honesty strengthens trust. Every patient response quietly changes the atmosphere surrounding you. Character spreads further than people often realize. The calmness you cultivate becomes reassurance for someone else. The integrity you practice encourages greater honesty in those around you. The compassion you choose may become the reason another person finds hope during a difficult season. Most of these moments will never receive recognition, yet they remain among the most meaningful contributions a person can make. In the end, the future is shaped not only by the goals you accomplish, but by the person others experience whenever your paths cross. Long after achievements are forgotten, people remember how they felt in your presence. They remember whether your words brought clarity or confusion, encouragement or criticism, peace or unnecessary conflict. The Stoics believed that a well-lived life could never be measured by success alone, because success without character eventually leaves very little behind. A truly better future grows through countless ordinary acts of patience, honesty, gratitude, and quiet consistency. These are the choices that strengthen not only your own life, but also the lives of everyone fortunate enough to walk beside you, even if only for a brief moment. In the end, building a better future has surprisingly little to do with predicting what will happen next year. Most people spend enormous amounts of time trying to anticipate every possibility, believing that if they could only see far enough ahead, they would finally feel secure. They wait for the perfect opportunity, the perfect economy, the perfect relationship, or the perfect version of themselves before they fully commit to the life they want. Yet the future has never been shaped by certainty. It has always been shaped by direction. The Stoics understood this with remarkable clarity. They knew that destiny was not a prize waiting somewhere in the distance, ready to reward those fortunate enough to discover it. It was something quietly unfolding through the ordinary choices made each day. Long before success becomes visible, it is already taking form in habits, decisions, conversations, and moments of quiet discipline that almost nobody else will ever notice. This understanding changes the way you think about time itself. Instead of seeing tomorrow as the place where life finally begins, you begin recognizing that tomorrow is simply the continuation of what you are practicing today. Every repeated action becomes a rehearsal for the person you are becoming. Every promise you keep to yourself strengthens trust. Every promise you ignore quietly weakens it. These moments seem too small to influence an entire future, yet they are doing exactly that. Character is never built in dramatic bursts of inspiration. It is formed through repetition. The way you respond to inconvenience today becomes the way you respond to greater adversity tomorrow. The patience you practice in ordinary moments becomes the patience you rely upon when life becomes genuinely difficult. Nothing is wasted. Every choice leaves behind a trace, and over time, those traces become the path your life naturally follows. There is something deeply comforting about this realization because it removes the impossible burden of controlling everything ahead. You no longer need to solve every problem before it arrives. You no longer need guarantees before taking meaningful action. The future stops feeling like a test you must somehow pass in advance. Instead, it becomes an invitation to prepare yourself through the only means that have ever truly been available. Your thoughts, your actions, your values, your willingness to act with integrity, even when no immediate reward appears. The Stoics repeatedly returned to this principle because they understood how easily people become distracted by outcomes they cannot command. They redirected attention toward the quality of daily living because that is where genuine influence begins. Every morning presents another opportunity to practice the kind of mind capable of meeting whatever tomorrow eventually brings. Many people underestimate the power of consistency because consistency rarely feels exciting. Dramatic moments capture attention. Quiet repetition does not. Yet nearly everything meaningful in life grows through patient accumulation rather than sudden transformation. Trust is built conversation by conversation. Wisdom develops reflection by reflection. Discipline grows choice by choice. Even confidence follows the same pattern. It does not suddenly appear because circumstances become favorable. It emerges because you repeatedly prove to yourself that your actions can be trusted regardless of changing emotions. Each ordinary victory becomes another reason to believe in your own character. Eventually, that quiet confidence becomes more valuable than any temporary success because it cannot be taken away by changing circumstances. It exists independently of applause, recognition, or immediate achievement. Gradually, you begin noticing that the life you once imagined as distant is arriving through surprisingly ordinary means. It appears in the discipline to finish meaningful work when motivation fades. It appears in the honesty to admit mistakes without making excuses. It appears in the courage to begin before confidence feels complete. As Aristotle observed, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. These moments rarely attract attention because they happen in private. Yet private choices have always carried public consequences. The habits no one sees become the character everyone eventually experiences. This is why the Stoics placed such extraordinary importance upon inner life. They understood that the unseen parts of a person inevitably shape everything visible. A calm mind creates calmer decisions. Honest intentions produce trustworthy actions. Disciplined thinking gradually influences every relationship, every opportunity, and every challenge encountered along the way. There will always be reasons to postpone becoming the person you hope to become. Life will continue presenting uncertainty, unexpected difficulties, and seasons where progress feels slower than expected. Waiting for perfect conditions only gives those conditions greater authority over your future. Eventually you realize that readiness is not something you discover. Perhaps that is the deepest lesson hidden within Stoic philosophy. The future is not patiently waiting somewhere beyond the horizon, separate from the life you are living now. It is already present within every decision you make today. Every disciplined habit strengthens the foundation beneath tomorrow. Every courageous action makes the next courageous action slightly easier. Every act of integrity quietly reshapes your identity until it becomes natural rather than difficult. One day you may look back and realize the future you spent so many years hoping for did not arrive because luck finally favored you. It arrived because, little by little, day after day, you became the kind of person capable of creating it. And that is why the greatest investment you will ever make is not in predicting what lies ahead, but in steadily becoming someone whose character remains strong enough to meet whatever lies ahead with wisdom, resilience, gratitude, and unwavering purpose. Remember, the future is never built all at once. It is built quietly, in moments that rarely feel extraordinary while they are happening. Every disciplined choice, every calm response, every promise you keep to yourself is shaping the person you are becoming. Long before the world sees the results, your character has already begun the work. If these ideas resonated with you, don't stop here. Continue the journey by watching one of the videos on your screen. It will deepen what you've learned today and help you continue building a life guided by wisdom rather than circumstance. Thank you for spending this time with me, and thank you for being part of Stoic Journal. Until next time, take care of your mind, stay true to your values, and keep walking the path with quiet strength.